Land Use Board meeting, August 21st. It is 7:47, and we're going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to salute the flag. Go ahead, Councilman.
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board of Borough Hall, by email to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled the same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. I would like to remind all members of the public that we have 3 fire exits, one in the back there, one behind me here, and one over on that side. In addition, will be recorded by both audio and video for purposes of creating a record during the public portion of this meeting. If any member of the public wishes to be recorded or heard, once they're called on, all they need to do is identify themselves by stating their full name and address for the record. Roll call, please.
Councilman Papaleo.
Here.
Mr. Arkelian.
Here.
Mr. Grasso.
Here.
And Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
You,
All right.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman, for 2 out of the 3.
Okay. So we're going to go to the approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes in front of us. We've got a few of these things here. Are there any corrections or anything on the, let's see, with the June 19th minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay, next would be the July 17th minutes. Any comments, questions? Nope. Nope. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay. Next, we have a resolution for Michael DeRosa, 264 Berkeley Road, Block 902, Lot 27. It was a 2-story addition. You should have gotten them in the emails, so we had an opportunity to look at that. This is I'll take a couple minutes to look through it. Any comments, any questions?
No.
Good. A motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Second. Second. Roll call on that.
Councilman Papaleo.
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian.
Yes.
Mr. Grasso.
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Next up is the resolution for 915 Poplar Avenue, Lot 106, Lot 8. And this was for the carport. I looked through this, I didn't see anything in there. It's not a requirement to tear it down if she moves.
Correct.
We did put in some requirement though, right? Or some,
Nope.
not the tearing down, but
No,
there was some stipulation of it not being turned into anything else, but I guess that's on our...
Yeah,
department.
she's only approved for that, so.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You good?
Yep.
Everybody? Have a motion to accept this?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Papaleo.
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian.
Yes.
Mr. Grasso.
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, the next up is for the Bergen County Historical Society. I was notified by our engineer that there were some late changes that need to be done by the county, so I'm going to ask that a motion that we table this review until the first meeting in September.
So moved. Second.
Roll call on that.
Councilman Papaleo.
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian.
Yes.
Mr. Grasso.
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
Okay, moving right along. Okay, Mr. Hahn,
Yes.
would you come on up, please? This is the completeness review for 382 Windsor Road, Block 809, Lot 38, proposed driveway expansion.
Right.
Need a variance for maximum coverage. Right now, all we're going to do is make sure that your application is complete. That's all we're going to talk about right now. So we're going to go to Mr. Barons, who is our code enforcement officer and zoning officer.
So the applications for an expansion of the driveway, we have the proposed driveway delineated on the survey. Calculation of impervious coverage has been provided. There's enough information to proceed.
Motion on the completeness, Mr.
Good.
Chairman?
We're good on the notices?
The notice was fine, Mr. Chairman,
I'll accept a motion from the board to...
on the completeness.
On the completion. So moved. Second. Roll call?
Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Okay, you might as well hit that first row there, because we're going to be calling you up again soon. You can go back and sit down for a few minutes. Next is Brian and Ann Connor, 501 Fenway, Block 813, Lot 4, proposed renovation, addition, existing dwelling. Several variances are required. Good evening. You want to just tell us who you are?
I'm Ann Connor, and
Brian Connor.
Roger Slick from RDS Architects.
Okay. All right, so right now, all we're doing is deeming that your application is ready for a hearing. Mr. Barons?
We've got a site survey of existing conditions and plans of proposed conditions which appear to be accurate, so I think we have enough to full site.
Mr. Chakowski?
I reviewed the notice earlier today. The notice is appropriate for the board to consider the case. You do have jurisdiction.
Any questions? A motion to approve this for completeness. So moved. Second. Roll call, please.
Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Okay, if we had, you can go back and sit down for a few minutes. We'll call you back. Mr. Barrett, if we had a quorum, I would be calling up for completeness. So, I have not heard back from Mr. Cray. He's the only one we're waiting for. We want to give him another 5 minutes. Or if you want to come back.
No, we'll wait, let's see what happens.
All right. And I apologize, it's summertime.
Brian, just give the other folks an extra seat for the operator.
Okay.
We're glad you came.
All right, Mr. Hahn, come on back up. Again, this is the application for Yang Ki Han, 382 Windsor Road, Block 809, Lot 38, for a driveway expansion. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Right. Now, Mr. Hahn, are you the only one that's going to be testifying on behalf of your application?
Actually, I'm accompanied by the contractor.
Okay. Why don't we start with you, and we'll see if we need the contractor. Could you raise your right hand for me, please? Your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And if you could state your name again and your address for the record.
Okay, so my name is Yang Ki Han. I'm a resident of 382 Windsor Road.
Okay. And you can put your hand down, and why don't you tell the board...
And you can sit down.
You can sit down, and why don't you tell the board what you're looking to do?
Well, actually, my road, the Windsor Road, is that I cannot park between 9 to 11 a.m. So, because a lot of commuters, they park the car over there. So, even myself, I cannot park my car on the street between 9 to 11 a.m. So, once I have some visitors, it is very hard to for me to park my car on the other street. I should drive my car to the Bergen Road and then well, my visitor can park on the driveway. So it is very inconvenient. So that's the reason why I want to extend my driveway 8 feet from 10 feet.
Okay. Mr. Bergen.
Okay, so the situation is such that Mr. Hahn stated he's looking to expand his driveway to a width of approximately 18 feet, so basically to have a double wide driveway. 18 feet is about as narrow as you want to get for such a situation. He mentioned he has some sort of a hardship related to the on-street parking requirements. So basically, the lot area that he has is approximately 6,000 square feet, which is considered undersized because the zone calls for 7,500 square feet. So a driveway on a conforming lot would likely not need a variance. He's had a coverage now of approximately 2,655 square feet and is looking for about an additional 240 square feet to accommodate the expansion. So he's going from about a little over 35% to 39% lot coverage. So in order for the board to grant a variance in this case, there would have to be some sort of hardship that you'd have to explain, related to the property, why you need this, and/or a public benefit, which could be, in this case, for an impervious coverage, there may be a way to offset any additional runoff in the form of a seepage pit or otherwise. The hardship in itself could be reason enough to possibly grant the variance, but those are two possible reasons that one might request the variance ruling.
I have one question. Actually, I think the percentage of occupancy is the issue of the some drainage, right? At the time of raining.
Yeah.
So if I put the paver instead of asphalt, it is more.
It's still looked at as impervious coverage. So
Yeah,
in reality, it might absorb a little more, but it still creates that because it's compacted.
Mhm.
It still is considered the same thing for the ordinance. So it's a good idea. If you have another way of collecting more rainwater on site before it runs down the driveway, that could be a benefit.
So I have two questions.
Yes.
One, you said about the parking on the street. Is that because there's signage there directing people that they can't park there? Or is it because people just park there and take up the space?
Yes, a lot of commuters that they park the car on the street.
So there's not
capture people.
signage there?
There's a sign. So, the resident on the Windsor Road, they asked put the sign there. So, even the resident cannot park on the car. Between 9 to 11.
Right, so my question is, can you park in front of your house between 9 and 11?
Sometimes.
I'm going to go back.
Talking about what the sign says. Does the sign say no parking between 9 and 11 in front of your house during the
Yes.
week?
So the sign says you can. So if you were to park in front of your house between 9 and 11, there's a good possibility you'll get a summons from the police. Is that correct?
Yes. If I have some visitors say I have some problems or something.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
If I could add just one more tidbit, I'm looking at the dimensions of the driveway. It looks like you have a garage, and the driveway is about 29 feet long.
Yes.
That would be pretty tough to get two cars even back to back. So
Mhm.
there's a question of how many cars could you even fit on the site given the existing conditions. So you might only be able to fit two at the moment, without hanging into the sidewalk or the street. So all these things considered.
Do you feel that there'll be any negative if we were to approve this on water runoff?
Ideally, you would try to mitigate it, but at the same time, there are some hardships that I think are warranting this request. I think the 18-foot wide driveway is probably consistent with that area of the borough too, in terms of having wider driveways. So I don't think it's an uncommon condition. The board is able to entertain conditions if that's something they want to deliberate. Again, he's over by about 200 square feet.
Mhm.
So there's the percentage, but then there's the actual amount.
Mr. Hahn, do you have anything you want to add?
I beg pardon?
You have anything you want to add?
Yes.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
I beg pardon?
Is there anything else you want to tell us?
No, so that's all. So I wanna just expand my driveway. So as the gentleman explained, if I park on the driveway 2 cars, the other person block the sidewalk. So that's the reason I wanna expand the driveway for 2-car parking.
Mhm. Board members, any questions?
I don't have any, no.
Tom, do you have anything you want to add? Mr. Chakowski?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman, just, for the board's edification, I don't believe the increase in coverage based upon the size that's being requested would require any real mitigation here based upon the characteristics of the area.
I'd like to entertain a motion and open to the public.
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay, this is just on Mr. Hahn's application. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Not hearing that. I'd like to entertain a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
The second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay. So at this point, I will entertain a motion on this application.
I would propose that we grant the variance for Mr. Hahn and propose that we vote on that.
All right, so if we approve tonight, you still have to go for a building permit. It'll be reviewed by the borough engineer. If the borough engineer decides that you need some mitigation for the water, you'll have to comply to whatever he tells you. Do you understand that?
So I should apply it again to the building department, you mean, right?
Correct. Okay.
We need a second on the motion, Mr. Chairman.
We have a second?
Second.
Mr. Grasso was the second.
And a roll call.
Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
Mr. Arakilian?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Before I go to the next application, Tom?
Does anybody remember how late Mr. Craig normally is?
I don't think this.
I don't think he's coming. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. All right, we'll see you in some,
All right.
see, they should have a song.
Mr. Barrett, just so right
We
now,
apologize for the inconvenience.
I did take a look at your notice. Your notice is appropriate, so you can return September 4th. Am I correct? September 4th, no further notice.
Thank you very much. Have a nice Labor Day, everybody.
Good evening. Yep, thank you, and great job on that.
Oh, okay. I'll tell him.
Okay, so next up is Brian and Ann Connor, 501 The Fenway. I believe they have their architect with them too, so could we have 3 seats? Good evening, folks. Good evening. Just for the record, this is Brian and Ann Connor, 501 Fenway, Block 813, Lot 4, proposed renovation in addition to existing dwelling, and they're requesting several variances.
Okay, so who's going to be speaking predominantly? Okay. So, if you raise your right hand, do you swear the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth?
Yes, I do. Why don't we get them all?
And
Let's just
the
do 'em all.
Connors, I'll do you both at the same time. Do you swear that the testimony about to give before this board shall be the truth? Yes. Okay. And sir, could you state your name and address for the record, and then also give the board the benefit of your qualifications?
Roger Schlick, RDS Architects, 56 Walthree Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Registered New Jersey architect for 33 years.
Okay. And could you spell your last name for me, please, so I have it correct?
Schlicht.
I forgot the H. Okay. Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, the notice was appropriate earlier during the completeness review, and I believe we have a set of drawings from Mr. Schlicht, which is dated May 17th, 2019, with the last revision date of July 18th, 2019. Now,
Correct.
Mr. Slick, there's been no further revisions to those drawings?
No, that's the correct
Okay,
date.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps if we just mark this as the entire set of drawings as A1. I guess we should.
Okay, so why don't you let us know what you're trying to accomplish?
Okay. I'd first like to hand out 2 pages of photographs.
We lucked out. We got enough.
I'd like to walk you through the existing conditions of the site.
Before we do that, Mr. Slick, we'll mark the photographs, it's a series of 8 photographs on 2 pages. We'll mark that as A2. And who took those photographs?
I did.
And when did you take them?
Some today and others in the spring.
You happen to have another copy?
No,
I'll give you my copy.
I mean,
Tom. No, I just looked through them fast, so as you walk through this way, you can see them.
Thank
You're welcome. So A2 will be the series of the 8 photographs, and you indicated that you took them yourself and
Yes.
that they were taken in the spring and some today.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So why don't you walk us through the photographs first?
Okay.
Let us know what we're looking at.
The first sheet with photographs numbered 1 through 4 are of the subject property. The upper left is the front of the house, number 1. Number 2 is the rear of the house. Number 3 is a mudroom entry steps that we want to modify. They're non-conforming, as you can see. And then number 4 is the front door of the home.
Okay?
Second page, photographs 5 through 8. Photograph 5 shows the subject property in the left, and then the adjoining property on the other side of the arborvitaes. That's where we're requesting side yard setbacks, so I'll speak to that photograph when I go through that variance. Photograph number 6 is from our property looking down, and it shows that the adjacent house to the left and their portico is closer to the street than ours. I'll be speaking to that when we talk about the front yard setback variance. Photograph 7 and 8 are just to show other homes in the adjacent properties that are of larger size than what we're proposing. So it's just a visual. The photograph 7 is about 3 or 4 houses down the road to the left, and photograph 8 is right next door to our property. So I'd like to take you through the existing site and the existing zoning, and then I'll walk you through the proposed architectural improvements, and then I'll go through each variance and try to put some hardship on testimony. So we have an existing single-family residence in an R1 zone. It has 6 non-conforming site conditions presently today. The lot is undersized. It is 6,964, while 7,500 is required. The lot width is 60 feet wide, while 75 feet is required, and those two will have an impact on all the variances. So we're 15 feet deficient in width. Right now, the lot coverage is 25.1, while 25% is the max. And the improved lot coverage presently today is at 39.6, while 35% is the max. So both of those are over the maximum coverage. The front yard setback to the steps today is 23.4 feet, while 30 is required, and we're going to be very similar to that, within 1/10 of an inch. And then to the house itself, presently it's 26.43 feet versus 30 feet. And lastly, if you look at the site plan and your survey that we issued, the left side yard setback presently today where the house is located is 5 feet, while 6 feet is required because it's a 60-foot wide lot. So you can see on the site plan how the house was built closer to the left on the right. The right actually has an enhanced setback today. It's like 13 feet, while the left is 5 feet. So they placed the house not in the center. So we have an existing lot which is deficient in area and width, with the structure being built too far to the left. So if we go to the floor plans on V2, first floor plan, basically, the first proposal is to rebuild the front steps. If you look at photograph number 4, which is the existing landing, and then the steps are not as wide as the landing. So we'd like to, so you can see how the railing kind of pops out to the left outside of the roof. So when we go through the elevations, I'll show you the new roof that we're proposing, but we're also asking to make the steps, rebuild the steps as wide as the existing landing.
As wide as what, I'm sorry?
The existing landing.
Okay.
Essentially, the front yard setback will be the same as it is today. It's just a wider set of steps. That's what we're proposing. The main thrust of the project is in the rear of the house. You can see the dining room, the kitchen, and the family room. We're trying to recycle as much space as we can in the middle of the house, but the proposal is to build an addition off the back of the house that is equal to the width of the house. Other than the fireplace enclosure, we're not any wider or closer to either the left or the right side yard setback. Then beyond that, you can see in photograph 2, presently there's 2 sets of decks, two decks, and then a walk down to a patio. What we're proposing is just a single deck to get out of the house, because it is 5 or 6 feet off the backyard, have some outdoor activity area, and then step down to the backyard. We're not going to have 2 decks, we're not going to have a patio.
So the patio's gone.
Yes, both of these decks, the upper deck is really becoming what we're proposing, the house, and beyond that, the lower deck will be removed, but we want to rebuild it at the height of the first floor, and then the patio would be gone. The last element that we're proposing is on the right-hand side, just a little covered entry, and I'll show you an elevation in a minute. But if you look at photograph 3, the steps that exist today are not compliant. There's no landing when you step out the door. You know, for safety reasons, the code requires you to have a 3-foot landing. So we'd like to rebuild the steps. Instead of protruding, having the steps go closer to the neighbor, we turned them and faced them to the street, so our landing didn't, and our steps didn't get closer to the right side yard setback. But we don't need a side yard setback for there. It's compliant. It's just, it has an impact on the coverages. But trying to remedy a non-conforming condition shown in photograph 3. So that's the first floor. If you look at the second floor plan, again, primarily it's equal to the width of the second floor. Presently, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house on the second floor. And we're proposing to build on top of the proposed rear addition an equal width to the existing second floor. There really isn't any variances required for the second floor. The height is compliant. The setbacks are more than sufficient, both sides, rear and front. But I just wanted to show you what the mass.
Is that original piece coming off or just being added to on the second floor?
Oh, we would leave that.
You're leaving that,
Yeah.
just adding onto it.
We're going to add it behind and on top of the
And you're going
garage.
to cantilever the second floor or no?
No, it's actually set in
Okay.
in order to diminish, just to kind of shape the house instead of a big box. I'll go over that with the elevations in a minute. So you can see the dashed line to the left of the second floor, to the rear where it says roof below. Those are all 1-story structures. Other than the right side, the left side is set in and the rear is set in.
So you're not adding to the side at all, just you're going to the back.
Except for that mudroom step, and then the fireplace on the left, on the first floor.
This here, and this is, instead of facing this way, it's facing, yeah, and then this is probably gonna be more space.
Okay. Continue, sorry.
No problem. We go to drawing V3. I'll walk you through the elevations. If we look at the front elevation with photograph number 1, the main change to the existing structure is to build on top of the garage, and that does have a compliant front yard setback and a right yard setback. So there are no variances for that particular addition that we're showing in the front elevation on top of the garage. The variances that we seek tonight is to build that new portico with the little gable roof at the front door. And on the right-hand side, you can see the open covered steps and the landing that would be entered into the mudroom. So the house, to the layperson, is going to look similar. It's going to be renovated, new siding, new roofing, but the brick and the stone and the bay window and that upper gable is staying, and the left-hand side is staying. We're not building on that side. That's the side that's too close to the property line. If you look at the right-hand side elevation, the only element that we need a variance for, again, is that mudroom entry that has a little peaked roof with the door and the steps. So it's an open structure, which I think minimizes impact. And then the left-hand side is the side that we're requiring variances, and it's a one-story structure. You can see like the low roof that happens at the midpoint up. The second floor that's set back is compliant. That has compliant dimensions. I'll go over those in a minute. What we really need is from the fireplace enclosure back, just that one section of 10'9" that has the square rectangular window requires the variance. To the right of the fireplace enclosure is existing, and then when it steps in to the back, it's compliant, becomes compliant. So it's not the whole side, it's just a very small portion of the side. And then the rear elevation just shows the gable roofs, the stepping of the massing. We like to kind of break it up and have low roofs to diminish tall walls with the proposed second floor, which is compliant in setbacks and height. And you could see on the right-hand side, the fireplace enclosure, it's not a chimney, and it's one story, so it's pretty de minimis in size, but that does require a variance. Any questions?
My application.
Do you have any questions on the plans or elevations?
Tom?
I just have one question, Mr. General. You mentioned that some of the surrounding homes or that the homes are larger. Do you happen to have those percentages in terms of coverages and comparison?
No, I spoke to the building department for the house that's being built. I forget the address, 481 or something, 85. The one that's in photograph 7. I don't know if anyone's driven by the neighborhood. It's being framed. I'm just doing it from a visual standpoint, and I was trying to exhibit that due to the you could see based on the photography that those buildings are going to extend further back than ours. So it's just a matter of standing in plane and looking and seeing that the other homes protrude further to the backyard than ours. I don't have any technical numbers on it. She just said, Nicole said it was that it was permitted and it didn't need any variances, but it still goes back further than what we're proposing. And the neighbor's house, which is photograph 8, that's to the left of our property. We're not going to go back as far as that addition goes.
So just on that picture, or not even on, actually not on that picture, are you going back about as far as the current low deck?
Yeah, if you go to the
So picture
first
2.
floor, if you go to the first floor,
You're talking about the lower deck, the existing lower
Yeah,
deck?
I'm just looking at this picture just to get a kind of visual of how far back you're going. So you're going about to that
To
spot.
the middle of the lower deck.
So not even as far back as you are
right,
with deck.
correct.
And then one other question on the current mudroom steps. So that is paved, that's paved or patio of some sort there now?
Yeah, we're ripping that up. If you look at the site plan,
Right, but what's currently covering that space, that's not stepping on a grass, you're stepping on a pavers right now.
yes,
So it's already covered to some extent.
it goes from the driveway to the backyard, and we're just going to take it from the driveway to the proposed steps and rip it up from the steps back to the backyard.
Okay, but
So
that is covered surface.
yeah, we're going to reduce that.
That's it for me for right now.
Okay, I'd like to go through the variances. The first variance that we're seeking this evening is a front yard setback of 23.3 feet, while 30 is required. As I said, they're essentially the same. The existing is at 23.4. We're proposing 23.3, just because we're trying to make the treads safer, 1 foot deep instead of 10 inches deep. So essentially what's there today, it's an open structure. It's not a wall. It wouldn't extend any closer than the neighbors, as I mentioned in photograph number 6. The neighbor's house is actually closer to the street, and then they have a portico that sticks in front of their house, so we would not even be close to how close they are to the front of the street. The hardship here is the existing condition of the location of the house. It's a legal residence, but it was built too close to the property. So we don't really have an alternative here. We want to create a safe set of steps that has coverage, I think curb appeal as well. So I don't think there will be any negative impacts from what we're proposing. And then all other aspects of the proposal has proper setbacks. So the second floor addition over the garage does not require variance. So it's simply that open portico. So that's the first variance. Second variance is the side yard setback on the left side. We're proposing 5 feet, which is a continuation of a pre-existing non-conforming condition, while 6 feet is required. As I mentioned, reviewing the drawings, it's a 1-story structure, so it's not 2-story. The second floor is set in quite a bit, so I think that mitigates any impact that might be seen from the neighboring property. The enclosure requires a 3-foot setback. Again, that's a 1-story structure. There is some arborvitaes that buffer the property. You can see in photograph 5 and 8. Those are on the neighbor's property, but they seem to be pretty healthy and mature, so that would mitigate any impact as well. The Connors did, I believe, review the drawings with these neighbors. They're on vacation. They can speak to that in a moment. So that's the second variance that we require, side yard setback. The hardship here is that the pre-existing location of the legal structure, and also the lot is 15 feet narrower than it's supposed to be. If the lot was a proper size, we wouldn't require a variance. So those are the 2 hardships in regards to this particular variance. The combined side yard setback is the third variance, and that is at 12 feet while 18 feet is required. And I would like to point out that those 2 dimensions that create the 12 feet is to the fireplace, which is 3, and to the open mudroom steps, which is 9. So that's 12. But if you took the left dimension to the house, like the first floor wall, and the right dimension to the house, it would be 18.9 feet. So the structure itself actually has proper combined side yard setbacks. It's that small chimney or fireplace box and the open steps. So I think the massing is proper. It's just those 2 appendages on the left and the right that require the variance. I think that has a big impact on not having a negative impact to the neighbors. Again, the hardship here is the narrow lot. It's 15 feet deficient. If it was proper size, we wouldn't require that variance either. The fourth variance is the lot coverage of 33.5%, while 25% is allowed. If you just took the house itself without the front steps, the back steps, the deck, and the side steps, we're at 25% for building coverage. What causes the variance is the front steps, the mudroom steps, the deck, and the shed in the back. The sheds in the back, the existing sheds. There's 2 sheds that exist in the back. To me, I look at that kind of breaking down the components and looking at what people see as a house. The main bulk box is compliant. It's all these appendages and small little play sheds in the back that create the variance. It's a small lot, so 100 square feet it's a very quick multiplier. You know, the percentage goes up very fast because it's only a 6,900 square foot lot. So the hardship here is the undersized lot. I think there would be minimal impact because of that reasoning, that the smaller components cause the variance. And I think the front facade, the streetscape, isn't going to change much. It's really in the back, and I think it's very consistent with other homes in the neighborhood. It's not as wide as other homes. Like that other house goes, I think, as far as they could left and right. So I think from the street, it's going to look close to what it is today. It's not a knockdown. And most of the bulk that we're adding is in the back. And last is the improved lot coverage of 44.1%, while 35% is allowed. And basically, those are all existing elements that are staying. It's the driveway and a walk from the driveway to the front steps, and then a walk from the driveway to the mudroom steps. We've ripped up the pavers. We're proposing to rip up the pavers from the driveway to the backyard, which was 248. So those are existing conditions, which we're actually reducing. And they do need the double-wide driveway because they have 2 cars in the family, and it's not a very deep driveway, similar to the last case. So we've ripped up what we could, and it's helped, but those are existing conditions that are just going to remain. So that's how that variance is created. So those are the 5 variances. I think, as I mentioned, a lot of them have a hardship based on the lot width, the lot area, and the existing location of the structure itself. Be glad to answer any questions.
I have just a quick question. You mentioned 2 sheds. I didn't see those on the plan. Were they approved, or they were just put up?
The first one, the larger one, was approved. The smaller one is a kid playhouse that I built. The children 9 years ago that they'd outgrown. So I'm more than happy to take it down. I think it's 6 by 6.
And how big is the other shed?
I want to say 10 by 10.
Yeah, it's 101 square feet.
And did you get a variance for that one, yeah?
There was one there when we bought the house, and then we got a permit to replace it.
Rebuild it, okay.
Just if I could say one thing, the reason why we also added a double driveway, it wasn't single, is there is a fire hydrant in the front yard, so preventing us from parking in front of our house. And again, we do have 2 cars, so that's the reason why we widened the driveway.
And I think we've lived in the house for 13 years, and we really thought about, well, we love the house, we love River Edge, we love our neighborhood, and we really want to keep the house in character with our neighborhood that we like so much, and we're doing the best we can. We have 2 kids that are 7 and 11, a boy and a girl. We really need to get them their own space soon. And we really need a bathroom on the main floor. It prevented us from having holidays with older relatives. You can't go up and down the stairs. So, you know, we don't take any of this lightly. And, you know, we love River Edge. We want to stay here, and we want this house to work for continued.
So before I go to the board with questions, I'm going to go to our planner.
So we got an overview of the number of variances, so I'm just going to run through those real quick. So again, there's a front yard variance, which has to do really with the front steps and the portico. As Mr. Slick mentioned, the steps are more or less remaining in the same position. They're just going to be covered. The garage, the covered area, the top platform is basically equidistant with the existing garage protrusion and is set back further than the adjoining property. I don't have much of an issue with this. I mean, really, they're just covering the porch and replacing what they have. And it would seem to be an aesthetic enhancement in that particular location. And again, consistent with the neighborhood. With regard to the side yard setback, just to add a little more information to this. So one is the aspect of the fireplace. So 5-foot setback is required, a 6-foot setback is required. The existing house is at 5 feet. And again, part of the addition is at 5 feet. Correct, so you have the addition extending 5 feet, and then the fireplace is going to 3 feet. The ordinance does allow for fireplaces to extend 2 feet into a side yard, so the difference between 6 and 2, 4, or again, they're at 3 with the fireplace. With regard to the side yard setback, it is a function of the distance between the fireplace and the side steps. If you took those side steps out of the equation, it would be conforming with regard to the combined side yard setback requirement. And then we get to the various coverages. So, Mr. Slick, do you happen to have the square footages of how much they're over by for both the lot coverage and improved lot coverage?
The actual diagrams are on the drawings, but, so if you took 6,961.
I could do the math, I just didn't know.
Yeah, no time.
You may actually have the calculator.
It's on the left side of the
Yeah,
first sheet.
I spoke to you, so let's see where we are. So with the building coverage, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're allowed about 1,749 square feet, give or take. And you're proposing
2329.
2, 3, 2. That's a difference of about what, 600?
588, I know.
588. So that's building coverage, 588.
Yes.
And can we do the same for improved lot coverage?
So you're allowed 2437. And we're at 3069. So it's 631. The driveway is 538. And so basically the driveway plus the front walk.
Tom, on the improved lot coverage, the existing is 2757, the proposed is 3069, so the difference is about 300 square feet
Correct, for the improved lot coverage.
from what's existing.
Yes. That's
And
not
the
a real
and the
good.
testimony was, I guess, that pavers and other, I guess the rear deck was, or the lower deck, whatever, however it was defined on the drawings, were being removed.
Yeah, the patio and the side walk would be removed.
So, I mean, for these 2 variances, you go back to the tests. So the tests are, 1 hardship and 2 public benefits versus any detriments. So we heard a little bit about the hardships about the undersized lot, and we heard some bit about the proposed development being consistent with some of the existing houses in the neighborhood. I don't know if there's any way to try to ask for any mitigating factors. Again, for something like this, we typically would require or ask for a seepage pit, I think. Again, subject to the review of the engineer. And I say subject to because on some properties, in some soil conditions.
First thing that was on my mind.
So that'd be number one.
That's totally fine.
I think if you found ways like removing the playhouse and it would be a good start to maybe come closer to conformance.
Yeah, 45
That
square
might be a
feet
place to start.
is a lot. The shed is 45, that's like 25% of
I don't know, I'm looking at your one neighbors who has the extension into the back. It's not quite the width of the whole house.
No, it's not.
And you didn't approximate how much, or what their coverage was? Or
That is a stone patio there.
Yeah, you can see him in photograph
I
5.
understand.
Would you agree to get rid of the shed?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll take the shed out.
and the seepage pit. Our neighbor did add one themselves. We're happy to do that.
It's a balance test. Do the hardships and the public benefits outweigh any detriments that this might cause in terms of...
So Tom, if they put a seepage pit in and they get rid of that shed, will that mitigate the addition that they're putting on the house to?
I understand that some neighbors have some larger houses. I don't know where they're at, per se. Would it help? Sure. Offset
Would it mitigate it?
entirely?
Maybe use the word mostly.
Well, I'm looking for if there's any other opportunities to maybe save some space here. What do you have the deck dimension?
It's on drawing V2. 18 feet by, it's 12 feet, and then it jogs into the kitchen another 2 foot. It's 18 by 12, and then it's 18 by 14.
18 by 14 is the deck size, correct?
Yeah, where it hits the kitchen. The kitchen's set in from the dining room. So starting at the left, the deck is 12 feet deep, which we consider kind of minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And then because the kitchen jogs in, the deck gets deeper by going into the house.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of one of the stairways, we
only need
one off the deck, is that enough?
Get rid of one of the,
Yeah, 2 stairways, you're saying? You
get rid of one.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, I don't know
35
why you
square
need
feet.
2. How much is that?
35 square feet.
How many square feet approximately are you over for the lot coverage?
The impervious or
Yes.
the slot?
Impervious.
Um,
Will improve lot coverage.
We've increased it by 312 from what it is today to our proposal. If you subtract 2757, but then we just removed the shed, which is 45, and then 35, so that's 80.
Basically, set
Steps.
back almost a third.
Yeah, a third of it.
How wide is the driveway?
It's not straight. It's 20 at the house, and at the road, it's like 18.
So it has a conformity.
Yeah.
Not always.
So back to my original question, Tom. Is this gonna cause, if we approve this with the mitigations that they're gonna do for the water, is there a possibility it will still impact the neighbors? Let me just say,
Yeah.
this is a common issue we deal with
Sure.
with just about every applicant that comes up here. Water runoff is a major issue in River Edge. The water table is very high to begin with, we all know that, and the lot sizes are all small, we know that too. So it's not like we want to make you unhappy, but we want to make sure that whatever you're going to do is not going to impact your neighbors.
So I would suggest, with those concessions that we made, if there's 250 square feet of new impervious, we'll put in a 250-gallon seepage pit. So that would mitigate any additional impervious. It would just neutralize it.
Tom?
So the number, we would, even if the engineer doesn't require it, we would put it in. If, just to wash out the number, I think that would be a good solution.
One, I think he would require it, probably. I don't want to speak for him. And I don't know if it would just be covering the difference or looking for a little more in terms of, the seepage
So what if
pit,
this one
groundwater
is
storage.
300?
Yeah, I mean, once you go and put it in, anything between 250 and 500, it's pretty much the same effort for the contractor. So,
So
the
Tom,
same pit.
350, pick a number, 1 to 10.
Does that resolve again, the setback issues are what they are. The coverages are, I just want to be sure that they're consistent with what's there. And that
I guess a
becomes
question
new
that comes
standard.
up in the back of my head is how important is that second shed?
Well, we have a single-car garage that, when it was built, it doesn't look like you could put a car in there, so
Mhm.
we have.
What my garage looks like, it's full.
It's already full, in the shed, we utilize it for lawn care. We put everything in there from the winter time, from the decks in the shed, we have no room in the garage. So, could we do it? Yes, I'd rather
But
reduce
it's
the size of
important.
the deck if that's needed.
Tom?
It's a question of the deck versus the shed. I mean, it's not.
So it sounds like
Saving
the,
100
it sounds like
square
the,
feet.
it sounds like the shed is more important than the deck, but do we really, I mean, the deck is gonna not really be a full displacement because you've got the,
Yeah, we got the ground.
falls
underneath.
through, what are you using, Trex?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
water's gonna go through.
The water's gonna go through anyway. Are we happy with the, let's say we do it a 350 gallon pit?
Subject to whatever the engineer.
A minimum of 350.
Let's just do a minimum of
Minimum.
350, this way, if the engineer misses it, we caught it. Is that good with you?
That's fine.
Yes.
Board members? Just on the water, okay?
Yep.
All right, so I think we have the water figured out, and you can keep your shed.
He wanted to hire a lawn service, actually.
We can make it force, we can force you to get rid of it.
Just throw out your lawnmower.
So where else are we, Tom? I know we've got that one side yard that's kind of shrunk down to almost nothing.
It's 3 feet, I mean, there's a separate provision that talks about, and it has to do more with light, air, open space, and fire safety, I think, that talks about houses on undersized lots have to be at least 12 feet away from each other. I don't know what that measurement is here.
One of the other concerns I had, your HVAC is gonna be on that side of the house?
Yeah, we eliminated that variance. We moved them from the building department denial submission. We moved them to a compliant location. You can see them on the site plan. They're more than what's required, so we eliminated
Tucked it
that.
away from the other house, okay.
Yeah, it's more than
Because
5 feet.
I don't want that
It used to be 3 feet. so-
waking everybody up in the middle of the night. All right, so we're good with the HVAC. So give the board some input on this fireplace, Tom.
Again, the required side yard setback is 6 feet. The ordinance allows for an extra 2 feet, which means that they can have it up to 4 feet.
And they're asking
We're
for,
asking for 3, so
3
they're a
feet.
foot closer.
One
to
more
the-
foot.
In the existing side yard is 5.
The existing house is at 5.
what does the board feel about that?
I mean, the way I look at it, it's only
It's a foot.
a foot by, I don't know how wide that actually is, by, I guess, 3 feet. It's not like it's running the entire length of the fence line.
Tom, do you see any danger? It's a gas fireplace?
Yeah, it's
So
not a
there's
wood
no-
burning
yeah.
fireplace.
So it has to be done by the same.
Actually, I have a question. If it's a gas fireplace, is there a vent that's going to be feeding out at 6, 7, 8 feet? As sometimes happens with the gas? And then would that vent be heating the,
Arborvitae's.
yeah, and therefore drying them out or setting them on fire?
Well, you have a choice, depending upon what model you choose. You can vent horizontally or vertically.
You want it to vent vertically.
Yeah.
The arborvitae's are actually further back on the neighbor's property
Then,
than where that fireplace would be.
So we haven't selected a fireplace, but each one comes with different configurations.
So if we required a vertical vent, would that be an issue?
No.
Tom, would that be better?
Certainly, that's a good point that Councilman brought up, so.
Tommy, would you be good with that if we put that
I
as
would,
part of
as
the
lo- I'm just
memorialization?
concerned about safety and fire.
100%.
So if we can mitigate that, that'd be.
All right. Go ahead, Tom. Where are you? Front yard doesn't seem to be much of an issue.
What's that?
Front yard didn't seem to
Front
be much of
yard,
an
no
issue.
problem. The side yard, again, we just went over that issue.
We've got coverage
the
taken
combined-
care of,
yeah,
got the
combined-
fireplace taken care of.
Those were the 5 variances.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Gonna just open up to the public. You don't have anything to say? Motion to open to the public?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Young lady, would you like to say anything? Is your dad doing a good job up here?
Thumbs up?
She wants to go home.
Then in that case, I'll entertain a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Tom, do you have anything to add? Sir, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you've heard me testify to the
You
hardship.
did a great job testifying.
You know, there's a lot of hardship here, there's a lot of conditions we're trying to work with, trying to keep the house in the character of the neighborhood. We didn't, you know, we're not doing a knockdown with a big box, we're trying to make it architecturally interesting. So I think there's benefits there, and I think the hardship's there, that's what allows approval.
We're all your neighbors. We want you to enjoy the town. And I think that with some of the tweaks that we did, I think that everybody will be happy in the long run. And I would like to entertain a motion on this application.
I'd like to move the application with the
Two
compromises
conditions.
that,
350 on the pit and the vertical fireplace vent.
and
You have
also
a-
the shed is going.
You have a couple, you have,
And the shed,
four,
yeah.
four conditions. You
Go ahead.
have the 350, seepage, 350 gallon seepage pits or larger if required by the engineer, removing the playhouse, eliminate one of two stairways on the deck, and the fireplace to vent vertically.
You good with that,
So moved.
Councilman? Do we have a second?
Second.
We'll take a roll call on that.
Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
Mr. Killian?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Mr. and Mrs. Connor, congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck. Yep.
Enjoy it. Sounds like it's gonna be a great plan.
Just a quick housekeeping note, two things. One, goes without saying, obviously, after today, if you can't make the meeting, please just shoot me an email so I know. And secondly, if you get an opportunity, you could drive behind where the Asian market was, and you will see a big, beautiful new fence back there for the neighbors.
Saw that.
So, and it's a great improvement, and that is a testament to this board looking out for the neighbors and so forth. So I'm very happy. And they also mitigated where the lift was as well. So they took care of the two things we required during that last application with the pizzeria, and it's a much improved area back there. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Beautiful. Thank you, everybody.
Very sorry to all of you for this evening.
Nope, that's all right. Thank you for coming. I greatly appreciate it.
Not doing exactly what I was supposed to and telling Jim that I was not coming.
You know what a
but-
nice treat that I get to meet her twice in a month.
Emma, thank
Thank
you
you
for
very much.
letting your dad come tonight.
Emma is now owed Burger King and a trip to the beach.
Awesome.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good.
Take care. Start over.